Oh, so we're in the top of Kuf Kal Gimel on Beis 123b. Yeah, and we just mentioned that Yosef left. Yaakov left Lavan's house once he gave birth to Yosef. So we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines down, the last 3 words. Bo minei Reb Chelba Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani. The Torah says, "Vayhi kasher yalda Rachel es Yosef." Once Rachel gave birth to Yosef, so then Yaakov left the house. So what happened when Yaakov gave birth to Yosef? Ma'ishna ki yisel Yosef. So what's the difference when Yosef was born? Why was that a reason to leave the house? Amar le ra'a Yaakov Avinu she'ein zara shel Esav nimser ela biyad zara shel Yosef. Yaakov saw that the descendants of Esav, which we're going to see is referring to also to Amalek, will only be given over to the offspring of Yosef. Shinamar, how do I know this? By Haya Beis Yaakov Eish. The house of Yaakov is fire. Beis Yosef lahavin. The house of Yosef is a flame. Beis Esav lakash, and the house of Esav is like straw. So what's going to happen? From the house of fire came a flame. The flame's going to consume the straw. So therefore, he saw it was a time to leave Lavan's house. So Esvei. So we're going to bring a few questions now from Tanakh that seem to imply that the descendants of Esav were given over to someone else's hands. So Vayakim David. So the verse tells us in Shmuel Aleph, Vayakim David mehaneshef v'ad erev l'macharasam. Then lo nimla mehem ish, ki im arba meos ish nara asher rochvo ala gemola meyanusu. So this verse is talking about one of the battles that were fought, that David won, and it says, and it says, where's the, yeah, and it says that, the Rambam says that it talking about Amalek, and right, they were fighting and they captured the wives of David. So David was going to go get them back, and David went and destroyed them. The problem is that we're talking about Amalek, and we're saying that David destroyed Amalek. The problem is that David is not from Yosef. David is from Yehuda. So David's from Yehuda, and yet you see that Esav's descendants, meaning Amalek was the son of a descendant of Eliphaz. Eliphaz was a son of Esav. And yet we see that they were passed down they're given over to the hands of David, not to the hands of Yosef. So the response is, the response is from Rosh Shmuel bar Nachmani back to Rav Chelbo. He says to him, he says, Amar le, the krayich nevi'eh, you know your nevi'im well, but the problem is, aloha krayich ksuve, you don't know ksuvim well. You know, you got through Chumash, you got through the nevi'im, and the ksuvim, you're not well versed in them. Why? The chsiv, because it says in ksuvim, in Divrei Yomim, that it says there, belechto el tziklag naflav mi Menashe, that when they were going to this place, Tziklag naflav mi Menashe, Edna v'Yosef v'Yidol, Michal v'Yosef v'Elio, v'tilti rosh alafim asher leMenashe. So it says, when it's recounting the story, when they're going to this place, Tziklag, to fight against Amalek, it says that what happened? All these people fell to Menashe. So the Rashbam says it sounds like since Menashe joined them, therefore Amalek fell into their hands. Now, where was Menashe from? Menashe was from Shevet Yosef. Therefore, you see that really it wasn't because of David. It was only because Menashe joined them that they were able to defeat Amalek. Next question. Masir Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks from Also Divrei Yomim. He says, Umehem b'nei Shimon halchu lahar seir. Anoshim chamesh meosu paltev v'na'ara v'rafev oziel b'nei Yishai b'rosham. So it's again talking about Amalek, and it sounds like that they fell in the hands of Ahem b'nei Shimon. They fell in the hands of b'nei Shimon. Amalek also fell into the hands of Shimon, not only into the descendants of Yosef. And you told me that Amalek will only fall into the descendants of Yosef. So to that we say, Amra bar Shila, that Yishi mi b'nei Menashe asi, that one of the people they're mentioning was Yishi. He was from the tribe of Menashe. Menashe was from the tribe of Yosef, and therefore it's not a question. They point out that this chefer, it's not really true. It's really efer v'yishi. The verse says, no verse says chefer v'yishi. It's really only efer v'yishi. Yeah, efer v'yishi. Okay, so either way, we tried 2 attempts at proving that Amalek did not fall into the hands of Yosef, and each time we disproved it by saying that they fell because of Menashe, and Menashe came from Yosef. Okay, back to Hilchos of firstborns. Tana Rabbanon, we learned in a braysa, Bechor notel pishnayim, a Bechor gets pishnayim. So now, let's say you are a Kohen Bechor. So we know that a Kohen, there are certain gifts that are given to the Kohen, such as a Zroa, L'chayim, and a Keva. So I don't know how to translate it, the foreleg, and the foreleg, the L'chayim, and the Keva. Let's say that translate.
It says jaw and maw.
3 different parts of the animal: the foreleg, the jaw, and the Keva. I don't know, the hind leg.
So I don't know what a maw is. Do you know which one the maw is? It says,
what's that on top?
It says
no,
in a foreleg, jaw, and maw.
Foreleg, jaw, and maw. No, but on top of it.
The most part of the stomach.
Oh, the most part of the stomach. Jared knew that. He was just checking. So okay. So habachor notel pishnayim bezorba l'chayim v'keva. Okay. Mikudashin. So we're gonna have a long list of things now that if a Kohen dies, his son the Bechor gets, and we're gonna go through them one by one. So first of all, he gets the zor l'chayim and the keva, the 3 parts of the animal that are the gifts to the Kohen. He receives. Mikudashin. If the animal was sanctified, he'll receive that also. And interestingly enough, let's say your property, which we're going to talk about in more detail, your property grows. So the father dies, and we'll see what the case is, but the certain property that he has, it grows, it improves. So is that part of muchzak, or is that like ra'ui? Right? We know that a bechor only gets muchzak, he only gets what the father has already. What happens if the father died, leaves things over, and now those things grow, and those things improve? So is that called ra'ui? Is that called muchzak? Let's see. After the father died. Okay, Ketzad, what's the case? The father left over a cow, either mucheres or muscheres. So either this cow was rented out. Yeah. So either the cow was rented out for a set price, $100 a month or something like that, or it was the cow was given and then the guy has to give back. He owes the guy whatever gain he gets. So let's say the cow gets into $1 million this year, he'll have to give $500,000 to the owner. So either it's rented out or it's like leased out, and they made a deal. That's like they're like in a partnership with this cow, meaning you keep part of it, but you have to give me part of the dividends. So the father leaves over this cow biyad ha'chayrim in someone else's hands. Either rented out, either the guy's paying him per month, or the guy's paying him the gains of what the cow produces. Or the cow was just grazing away in a meadow. So now what happened? The yolda. Now the cow gave birth. So the father died. He left the cow in other people's hands, and then it died. But then apparently, before the father died, or maybe after, the cow got pregnant and gave birth. The yolda. So what happens? Bechor notel pi shnayim. So the Bechor is going to get double of that baby cow. I guess they would sell the cow and split the money, and the Bechor would get 2 portions of that money. Are those sirens for you? So, but that's an example of when the things that the father owns, they grow on their own. Only when they accrue on their own does the Bechor get it. But if, like the following case of Al Banu Batim, if the kids go, or I guess the kids, if the kids themselves go, they take the money or they take the land, and what happens before it gets divided up, they go and they build houses or they plant vineyards. So Eina Bechor Notel Pishnaim of that. If before it gets divided up, they go and they invest their money, they go and they build these huge things, that the Bechor doesn't get. We'll see that only the thing that goes on its own, you could still consider it like it was the father's, to be considered muksuk. But if this is brand new already, they took money and they invested and made, so that was never what the father owned. And then the father never owned all these mansions. So that the Bechor is not going to get. Yeah. Okay. So now, these 3 parts of the animal, the hind leg, the foreleg, and the jaw, heichidami. What's the case exactly? So if the father got it when he was still alive, so pshita. Like, why would the kid not get double portion of that? That should be obvious. And if the father never got it, so then it's ra'uihu. It's ra'uihu. Meaning, what's the case over here? What's the case that we're teaching that a firstborn will get a double portion of? Why is this he'll get a double portion. What's the case where he'll get a double portion of the Kohen's gifts that he got? If the Kohen got it when he was alive, that's obvious. It's like everything else he's going to get a double portion of. And if he never got it, so that's a ro'ui. That's not his. Maybe it's fitting to go to him, but a Bechor doesn't get what's fitting to go to the father. He gets what is given to the father. So here comes a lot of interesting things in this answer. So says the Gemara, a Bechor does not take beroi kibbe muksat. So what's the case? Interestingly, hacha b'makire kehuna askinan. We're talking in a case where the same people always give to the same kohanim. It's their good friends, their loved ones. So we know that these people are going to give their presents to this Kohen, this father. So, and what happened? They already shechted the animals in the life of the father, meaning if they didn't check them yet, it's too far removed. The animal's still alive. In the case where you know that you're getting this from your Kohen friend, from your Yisrael friend, he already shechted the animal. And one more, because savar matna shalohurmu kimi shehurmu damu. And this is of the opinion that gifts that are not yet, they're talking about truma, different gifts of the kohanim that haven't yet been removed. So let's say you have a whole field, and we know that it's called tevel until you take off truma, and you can't get any benefit from tevel. So you have to take off truma and give it to the kohen. So what happens if you always give to the same kohen? So it's a big novelty that you can consider. It's already in the guy's hands. It's just a practicality of actually delivering it to him. You have it in the envelope, and you have the stamp on it, and you have his name on it, and I don't know. You already see the process has started. So that's the novelty over here. That even in that case where it hasn't gone to the Kohen's hands, it's still enough to be considered mukzak and not ro'ui. The Rashbam points out this idea that you can consider presents, as if they're already given, is learned out of a pasuk. Yeah. So it sounds like we'll need a verse for this. It's not logically, you could argue both ways, but all these things put together, and that's going to be the case of our brisa. Okay. Now, we said another example is things that are hektish. So what's the problem though? When you make your animal hektish, it doesn't belong to the father. It belongs to hektish. Hektish is their own corporation. So how does the bechor get a double portion of hektish? Hektish doesn't belong to him. Doesn't belong to his father either. So I guess in the event that the father sanctified, he sanctified something. So and then he died. So how do you get a double portion of that when that belongs to the corporation called hektish? So says the Gemara, Muktashan lavdi deininu. It's not his. Says the Gemara, yeah, but there's two kinds of hektish. There's something called kedushas haguf. There's kachim kalim, which is a lower sanctity, and there's hektish, which is more chamer. Yeah, kachak kadashim. There are things that are much holier and things that are much lower. Meaning, you can sanctify the guf of the animal, and for certain korbanos, like we say, like having the korbanos and davening in the beginning, certain korbanos are treated with much more severity. You have a certain time to eat them. You can eat them in a certain place. Those are much more severe. But then there's something called kachim kalim. It's a lower level of sanctity. So now, if this animal was sanctified with a lower level of sanctity, and v'ali with the Rabbi Yossi Glili, and you go like the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Glili, the Amar, Mamon Bailimhu. So I think this is a kedushin. So the Gemara there talks about kachim kalim. So you sanctified an animal with a lower level of sanctity. Now that money, it's still considered yours, or it's totally considered hektish's already? What's the difference? Can you take the money and marry a lady with it? If you can only marry a lady with your money. So if it's yours, so then you could still marry a lady with it. But even if the lower level of sanctity belongs to hektish, then you can't use that money, use that animal to marry off a lady with it. The Rashbam points out, though, even 1 second. Yeah, so for example, a korban chatas, a korban asham, those are all a higher level of sanctity, and they have what we call me'ilah, a special portion of the Torah for misusing it. But let's say a shlomim is a lower level of sanctity, that's not going to have me'ilah. Just 1 second. Right. But this whole thing, here we're talking about only if the animal is still alive. The Rashbam points out it has when the animal is still alive, because if you sanctify the animal, think about it. If you sanctify the animal, what do you want to do? You want to bring it to the mizbeach and sacrifice it. It has to be slaughtered. Once it's slaughtered already, then we already view it in the domain of hektish, and that the Gemara famously says, once the Kohanim get to eat the animal, that's already, they're only zocha, they only merit it from the shulchan gavoa, from the higher table, so meaning from Hashem. But when the animal is still alive, that's when Rabbi Yossi Glili says that the money is still considered yours. So we're talking about a lower level of sanctity, kachim kalim, such as a korban shlomim, and we're talking about when it's alive. That animal, Rabbi Yossi Glili holds, you can take that animal and marry off a lady with it. It probably hasn't happened nowadays so much, where instead of a ring, he gives her a cow. But you can imagine, right? The cow goes down the aisle and you give her a cow and you marry her off. So if the father dies and the animal is still alive, Steve's saying maybe in South Africa. Okay. So if the father dies and the animal is still alive, then in the case of kachim kalim, according to Rabbi Yossi Glili, then the son will get the bechor will get double of that animal. Okay, so we just spoke about a case where the father left the animal and it was able to grow in its price. It was able to grow qualitatively on its own, meaning it had a baby. The cow had a baby, and we said since it grew on its own, the orphans didn't take the money and build houses with it. That's still considered something which is muhzak and not roi. So now let's just go back to that for a second. You left the cow either rented or co-signed to somebody else, or it was grazing in the fields. So whether it's in someone else's hands or it's just out there grazing and it has a baby, you, the bechor, can still get a double portion of that baby cow. Says the Gemara. It seems a little bit repetitive. Hashta muchkeres umuskeres delav bershusa damara dedu kaima armis shakel. You told me that if it's in the hands of somebody else, meaning someone else is using the cow and it gives birth, and you get a double portion of the baby, so then for sure, if it's not in the hands of someone else, it's just grazing around and it gives birth, for sure you should get a double portion. So, roe ba'afar mibayi, meaning you taught me 3 cases. It's rented out, it's co-signed, and it's grazing around. All 3 times you told me if the cow gives birth, the firstborn gets a double portion. But I have a question for you. Why'd you tell me those 3 cases? Just tell me the case of when it's rented out and co-signed. If it's rented and co-signed, so then we're going to know already that if it's just grazing around and gives birth, so we'll know that you get to have a double portion. There's no novelty in the case of it grazing around, and we're always looking for a novelty. So when it's in someone else's hand and someone else is working the cow, okay, there maybe you could say, is that considered, is that considered mukzak? Is that considered roi? But grazing in the meadow and had a baby, there's no novelty in that. So why did you teach me that case? Hakamash Malan, to teach you the muchkeres umuskeres is dumya dero bafar. Meaning, you're right. The case of grazing in the meadow for itself, there's no novelty. No reason to teach it. However, we want to compare the other 2 cases to this case. In what way are we comparing the other 2 cases to this case? Ma roa ba'afar shvacha d'mamela ka'asi, just like when the cow is grazing in the meadow. The only thing that caused it to give birth is it itself, right? It's totally on its own. No one touched it. No one enhanced it. No one gave it steroids. I don't know. No one did anything to cause the cow to give birth. So, maro ba'afar shvacha d'mamela ka'asi v'lo chasri b'mazona. So, in the case of it's grazing by the meadow, it gave birth on its own. V'lo chasri b'mazona, it wasn't lacking any food. So too, af muchkeres umuskeres. So too, when someone's renting it or co-signed the animal, shvacha d'mamela ka'asi, delo chasri b'mazonus. It sounds like it must be a case where, not that it wasn't lacking any food. Just like when it was in the meadow, no one went and fed it, no one went to give it food. So too, in the case of where it's rented out or co-signed out, so too there, the Yisomim didn't give it any food. Maybe the footnote says, but it would seem like if the Yisomim would go and continuously feed it, and then it would give birth, then that's already not called that it got on its own with the baby. It came from help from the Yisomim. That's already more similar to the Yisomim, that the orphans that built a house or a vineyard. That's not called its own. That's not called so much on its own anymore, and therefore it might not be considered muchzak. It'll be considered roi. Yeah, that's what the Rishbam says. The Rishbam says that we're teaching here that since the orphans themselves, they didn't take the animal to plow and they weren't working with the animal, rather it came on its own. That's so there, in the event that they don't give it any food, it's more on its own. That's the case that it's will be considered muchzak. But I guess it sounds like if you were to give it food, then, and I guess somehow that helps in having a baby, a cow baby. I don't know, not sure. But in the event that you would give it food, so then it sounds like it's not considered muksak anymore, because the increase of the cow came through the means of somebody else, and therefore it's like their work helped cause this cow to improve in terms of having the kid. Yeah, okay, maybe we'll double check that for tomorrow. Okay. So now, a little bit of a new thing. Yeah. So money, Rebbe here. So who's this opinion that says that things that grow on their own is considered muksa? Rebbe he, the Tanya, Eina b'chor notel pishnayim b'shvach sheshapchu nechasim la'achar mitzvaviyim. Rebbe said in a brisa that a bechor does not take a double portion of anything that, the first part of the brisa says, nothing that improved after the death of the father is given over to the firstborn as a double portion. So he would not get a double portion of this baby, even if it grew on its own, even if it improved on its own, doesn't matter. Rabbi Omer, Omer ani, I say, Bechor notel pishnayim, b'shvach sheshavchu nechasim, la'achar misa savihem. Aval lo b'shvach shehishbichu yisomim la'achar misa savihem. Rabbi says anything which increased on its own without the help of the orphans, that the bechor will still get a double portion, because that we still consider that it's really the father's own thing which is improving. However, if the orphans go and improve the land, so then we are not going to say that the bechor gets a double portion. Okay, now here gets a little tricky. Yarshu shtar chov. So somebody owed the father. He loaned money from the father, owes him $10,000. So now how do you view that? $10,000 in a document, the father dies. Does the bechor get a double portion of that also, or no? So on the one hand, the guy didn't pay back the money yet, right? There's a document saying you owe me $10,000. So maybe that's ra'ui.
But what if I fed the guy and helped him get back to that?
Yeah, but you wouldn't feed him. You would intimidate him.
Give him some food.
So, yeah. These aren't homeless guys, Jared. These are. So here comes the novelty that a document, a legal document, a shtar, is not just a point of reference to show you that it's not just a point of reference that shows you that guy owes you money. The shtar itself is much more than that. The shtar itself, you can see the loan, so to speak, in the document. This document has the loan contained inside of it, and therefore, if you're giving over this document as an inheritance, the bechor will get pishnayim. Yeah. Okay, that's one case. Now, what about Yarshu Sharchov Bechor Notel Pishnayim? So that's if you inherited a loan document. Yatsa Alehen Shtarchov. So now the other way, they came and they say your father owes us $10,000. So who has to give up that $10,000? Right. So let's say there's 3 kids. So is each to get $3,333.33. And they have to, that's all they have? Or no, the bechor is notel pishnayim. So really, he has to give
So there is a scenario where the bechor could really
that's right. We'll see in a second. He could
have
both. Yatzaleh and shtarcho bechor nosen pishnayim. Listen to this. Im amar eini nosem eini notel rishai. The bechor is allowed to say, I don't want the bechor and I don't want to give up the bechor, meaning he could remove himself from this. He could, so here the Rashbam explains, because the way it's written in the Torah that we give you a bechor is lasei slow. We're giving it to you, like the same way as a present is given to you. You don't want the present, you don't have to have the present. So we're not going to force you to receive a gift. We don't force gifts upon people. So that's only by the bechor, by the way. The other part of the inheritance, it's not a gift. It's yours. It's a reality. It's yours. Wasn't given to you in the Torah as a gift. The other parts, that's already your Yorish. That's given over to you, not gifted to you. It's given to you. So, yeah. So that if the Bechor wants to say I don't want, he can back out of it. So now, let's see how fast we can go. Okay, I'm going a little fast. This my alarm. Yeah, my time out the Rabbanon. Why do the rabbis say that they argue with Rebbe and they say only whatever the father has when he dies goes to him, and that's it. Nothing that improves afterwards. Amar Kra Lasei Slow Pi Shnayim. So Matan, it says Lasei Slow. I'm going to give you Pi Shnayim, double portion. Lasei Slow. It's Matana Kari Rachman. It's like the form of a gift. So Ma Matana, just like a gift. Ad Dematya Liyadeh, Av Chelik Bechora Ad Dematya Liyadeh. Just like a gift is only going to be yours when it goes to your hand, so to the Bechora will only be yours when it goes to the hands of the father. But things that improved that he never had in his hands, that's not going to be part of the Bechor. The Rebbe Amar, and Rebbe says, Amar Kra Pi Shnayim. It says Pi Shnayim, a double portion, 2 portions. Makish Chelik Bechora leChelik Pasha. The Chelik Bechora is compared to the regular portion. Ma Chelik Pasha